Last time on the Sports Lab, we took 50 sports cities and put them into one massive tournament. In the NFL, the Indianapolis Colts defeated the Detroit Lions. In the NBA, the Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Detroit Pistons in 5 games. In the MLB, the Chicago Cubs beat out the Seattle Mariners in 5. In the NHL, the Columbus Blue Jackets beat the Avalanche in 7 games. After insane playoff runs and crazy upsets, the top 16 cities remained and advanced to this episode. The 16 cities that will be competing in round 2 are Minnesota, Detroit, Boston, Denver, Indianapolis, Dallas, Los Angeles B, Philadelphia, Chicago, Columbus, San Francisco, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Houston. The Sports City tournament is starting right now, so let's get into it. But before we start, we have some rule updates and changes. After this episode, only 4 cities will remain and advance to the finale. Instead of a full tournament-style playoff, it will just be a 4-team playoff with only a semifinal and a final. And also, when we show the standings, the teams that were eliminated in Episode 1 are blurred out for less confusion. So let's get Episode 2 underway. Starting in the NFL at the midway point in the NFL season, the Detroit Lions led the NFC with a 7-1 record, and right behind them were the Chicago Bears with a 7-2 record. And over in the AFC, the New England Patriots led with a 7-2 record, leading their division. But the Colts and Chargers were right behind New England with 6-3 records. After simulating the entirety of the NFL season, here were the standings. In the NFC, led by Christian McCaffrey and that San Francisco powerhouse defense, the San Francisco 49ers secured the 1 seed, while in the AFC, the young Drake May and Patriots secured the top seed with a 13-4 record. The playoff matchups were set. The New England Patriots were facing the Los Angeles Chargers. This game was very low scoring, and the New England Patriots came out on top by winning 7-6, so they will advance to the Super Bowl. Then, in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers were facing the Minnesota Vikings, and in that game, San Francisco came out on top by winning by 2 touchdowns. Then, in the Super Bowl, both of these 1 seeds were highly competitive, and in the end, the San Francisco 49ers weren't able to score any points in the Super Bowl, and the Patriots had 13, which means the New England Patriots are the NFL champions and now would get Boston 8 points. And here's what the scoreboard looks like after the NFL season. Now, over in the NBA, after a full season of crazy games, insane player stats, here were the end-of-season standings. In the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons held the best record with a 55-27 record, and right behind them, in second place, were the Jason Tatum-led Boston Celtics with a 42-40 record. And over in the Western Conference, the Anthony Edwards-led Timberwolves finished with the best record of 59-23. And in second, the Golden State or San Francisco Warriors finished with 49 wins and 33 losses. The playoff matchups were set. In the East, we had the Detroit Pistons versus the Boston Celtics. That series did not go too well for Boston as they got swept, resulting in Detroit advancing to the NBA Finals. Then in the West, we had 2 competitive teams facing off against each other, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. But in the end, the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to beat them in 5 games. Then our finals matchup was set. We had Minnesota versus Detroit. This series was not competitive at all as the Detroit Pistons got swept in 4 games by the Timberwolves, which means Minnesota are the NBA champs. Here was the scoreboard after the NBA season. Then, in the MLB, after a long 162-game season, the 4 playoff teams were set, and here were their records. The first team from the American League to make the playoffs was the Minnesota Twins with an 83-79 record, and in the playoffs they'll be playing against the 98-64 Seattle Mariners. And over in the National League, the first team to make the playoffs was the Los Angeles Dodgers, led by Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto, and all of their insane hitters. This team also had 104 wins. The team that will be playing the Dodgers will be the Philadelphia Phillies, and they had a 95-67 record. Now that the playoff matchups were set, it was time to simulate to see who the World Series champion would be. The first series was underway as the Dodgers were taking on the Phillies, but this series was too easy for the Dodgers as they won in 6 games. Then on the other side of the bracket, in the AL, the Twins were taking on the Mariners, and this was a competitive series, but the Mariners pulled away and won in 6 games. Now the World Series matchup was set. It was the Seattle Mariners versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. After an intense and crazy matchup, the Los Angeles Dodgers defeated the Mariners in 7 games. And here was the scoreboard after the MLB season. Finally, in the NHL, here were the midseason total NHL standings with the Tampa Bay Lightning leading the way with a record of 27-13-1. And in second, at the midseason mark, the Minnesota Wild were only 2 games behind Tampa. Then, after the NHL season, here were the top 4 finishers and the teams that will be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The first team to make it was the Tampa Bay Lightning with a total of 103 points. Then Dallas with 98. Then in third, it was Seattle with 97. Then the final team in the playoffs was Minnesota with 96 points. Here are the first matchups with Tampa Bay beating Minnesota in 6 games, advancing to the Stanley Cup Final. Then on the other side of the bracket, we had the Dallas Stars defeating the Kraken in 6 games, making the Stanley Cup Final matchup Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Dallas Stars. And after an incredible NHL season, the Lightning were able to take the crown home and win the NHL in a 4-game sweep. Here's the scoreboard after the NHL season. Now this is where we will reveal who is moving on to the finale. We will reveal who is moving on from the 4th seed to the 1st seed. Starting with the 4th seed, led by the Seahawks, Mariners, and Kraken, Seattle is moving on to the finale. Then, the 3rd seed, led by the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, and Patriots, Boston is moving on to the finale. Then the 2nd seed, led by the Clippers, Dodgers, Ducks, and Chargers, Los Angeles B is moving on. And finally, the number 1 seed going into the finale, led by the Timberwolves, Vikings, Wild, and Twins, Minnesota is moving on to the finale with the number 1 seed. Sorry to these 12 cities. We'll see you all and these 12 cities another time. Thanks for watching the Sports Lab, and make sure to watch the Sports City Tournament finale on July 18th.